Julie, it's so great to meet you. Thank you so much for taking a minute out today. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here.
Me too. Let's begin our journey with this. 6 years ago, this pandemic was changing our lives, changing so much. How did you get through the pandemic, and how has it influenced the way that you work and coach today?
It's so interesting when I think about the Julie who entered the pandemic. A little bit of a segue. When I first started really working on myself, I took this personal development program, we'll call it. And I don't want to scare your listeners, but if they've seen the documentary like Nexium about the Smallville actress, etc. Okay, so it's not the same program,
Yeah.
but it's all these. Whether you look at that group or there's like MITT, Boston Breakthrough Academy, Choice in Las Vegas, Ascension Leadership Academy is what I did in San Diego. They're all based around the same like train of thought from the 70s. It's called the Wellspring.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So that's like the genesis of all of them. And I promise this has a point. But I did that right before the pandemic started. And it's very confrontational. It's definitely not for everyone. I think if it is for you, it's really supportive and helpful. But at one point in one of the levels, the like instructors or whatever like surround you in a circle. Don't worry, there's not like any hazing, but they start saying things at you, right? Like basically how they view you. And so one of them was saying like scared little girl, scared little girl. And it was so interesting. Like at that point, I was a barred attorney. I had been practicing for 3 years. Like I hadn't lived at home since I was 18. Like I paid for all my own things. I was like, scared little girl. I was under 30. I was like 27 or something, right?
Yeah.
But when the pandemic hit, I realized that I really was. I was scared. I was super scared. And, probably rightfully so. People are dying all around me,
Yeah.
right? And so it's not to say that the fear was unfounded, but it was like life is always going to throw you something, whether it be a national pandemic or maybe your own personal health scare or like the health of your parents or a tough relationship, whatever. Like life is going to put the pressure on you because that's just the nature of existence. But I was not forged in the fire yet to handle it. And so right around the pandemic was also when I started getting certified to coach. I already knew I really wasn't like in love with the practice of law anymore. Um, but I think I went home for a little bit. I'm from Iowa. I know I said that with you before.
Yeah.
But I went home because I was living in California. I was living in San Diego in a tiny apartment, and I was like, I cannot make it through the pandemic in this like one bedroom apartment. I need to go home where we had a lot more space. And so I was there with my mom for part of it. I finished my coaching certification, and I really like honed the part of myself, like that self-trust, where it's like no matter what is happening outside. I am okay inside, that like greater sense of equanimity. And I honestly think like doing all this like intense personal development work on myself during the pandemic is what got me through it.
Which makes you a more effective coach because you've walked through that fire, right? I mean, that's the whole idea of being somebody that's helping people get to another place. If you don't know what that's like, the high and low, how effective are you going to be at it?
Yeah, I oftentimes think my dad died when I was little. And that's like one of the hardest things a kid can go through, right? And I feel like that has made me such a better coach because I know a lot of people who are great people and are coaches, but they haven't personally dealt with something like that.
Yeah.
And so they get a little scared when people want to go deep. And I mean, I've had people go deep with me talking about like past trauma, abuse, neglect, like all of it. And I can sit there in the fire with you because I sat in my own fire, but not everyone is willing to like be there and like meet someone there, right? A lot of people shy away from it. And I'm like, no, this is the juice. If we're not going to get here, we're not going to get anywhere.
Yeah. Often thought, because I'm in my 50s now, and I've thought about whenever I go through death, there's a level of me that understand. I squeeze what is good out of it. Like I lost my favorite dog of all time 2 years ago, and I was like, I can't imagine what my life would have been like if I didn't have that dog. Or when someone leaves, pulling that out. Has losing your dad at such an early age given you a perspective on death that's kind of enhanced the way that you see this reality?
Yeah, definitely. I don't believe that this is the end. I feel like he's always with me. I sometimes then this is kind of a weird one, but my dad used to burn leaves on like the back acres of our property, and it would make my mom so mad 'cause it's like illegal. You can't do it in city limits, whatever. and he would come back up and he would smell like these burnt leaves. And I thought it was funny because my mom's mad and I'm little, and but sometimes I'll smell burning leaves.
Uh-huh.
And I'll be like, guys, like who's like, is someone having a bonfire? It's like I don't smell anything. So to me, I always have this like sense of awareness that he's with me. And it made me realize like everything is either a thorn or a rose
Right.
depending on how you look at it. And it can be both, but some people are so unwilling to see the rose and the thorn, and it's like it's both, right? That's life. Life is the dichotomy. But some people really just want to see the thorn.
So let me ask you this. If I put you in front of a bunch of teenagers at a middle school and it's career day, and one of the kids wanted to know what you do for a living, how do you explain it to those kids?
Ooh, okay. Wow, that is such a good question. Okay, so I would say to the kids, I might ask them first a question and say, has anyone ever had an experience where something was happening and you felt your heart racing and you started to get kind of sweaty and you didn't know what to say and you started really worrying about like, oh my gosh, what if I say the wrong thing? Or maybe the teacher calls on you in class to read and you're not that confident and it makes your stomach tighten up. That's an experience of anxiety. And some people, as we get older, some of you might now, right now, might know what that feels like, but some people experience anxiety a lot of the time and they feel that tightness and they're unable to, get up at bat or they're unable to complete a test and do well. Well, I come in when things like maybe I wouldn't say things like therapy, but I might come in when other things aren't working and
Yeah.
I help them resolve that anxiety and let go of it so they can be the best baseball player they want to be, like get an A on their math test. Um, feel confident reading out loud in class. I probably wouldn't get into psychedelics
Right.
and what all of that is, but
Right.
at the end of the day, I'm here for change modulation. I had someone who, I was sitting next to this old guy on a plane who like did not understand what I did. He's like, "Oh, you're in change management," and I was like, "Yeah, I guess I am."
Yeah. So what did you want to be when you were a kid? When you were like 12 or 13 years old, what was your dream gig?
That's so funny. I was thinking about that the other day, and I was like, I never really had one except when I was in elementary school. I really liked the idea of being a marine biologist and like
Yeah.
studying sharks. I thought sharks were cool. But I was never that little girl who was like, when I grow up, I'm gonna be this and I'm gonna get married. And but I did really want a white picket fence in front of my house. So that's one thing that I remember journaling about.
That's very Iowa though. I mean, that's a very Iowan when you think
Yeah.
about, how things work out there. So let me ask you this. What were the early seeds that were planted into you that made you get into law, that made you eventually get into coaching and psychedelics? How did all of this eventually evolve into who you are and what you're doing now?
Yeah, so I mean, we really have to take it back because I can see it so clearly, but the initial like happenings make no sense for how we got here. But when I was in high school, one of my best friends was my debate partner, and she ended up having cancer 4 times while we were in high school.
Wow.
Thankfully, she's okay now. She actually lives here in Kansas City too. But she had to have a complete stem cell transplant. Like we thought she was going to die. We were
Yeah.
all completely sure. And that's really scary because yeah, I'd seen my dad die as an adult, right? But this is a person, she's my age. And when I met her, she was vibrant. We were running cross country. And now I'm looking at her. She's puffy from chemo. She's bald. Like it's terrible, right? And
Yeah.
so she looks at me and she goes, I actually got tingles, but she goes, Julie, will you please cure cancer for me, like after I die? And I was like, oh my God, of course, Brenna. Yes, Brenna, right? And so she gets her stem cell transplant. She should have been going into college, but that summer she was getting her stem cell transplant. And then you have to be like kind of in a bubble because your immune system is gone. But I was going into college. And so I wanted to my idea, my path was to go to med school and then go into oncological research. And so I had signed up for this pathway to do that, like the pre-med pathway at school, and we took this class. And it's called med prep, and you're in a hospital and like accidents are happening and like blood is I was like, "Oh my God. This is not for me. I cannot deal with blood. I don't care if my mom is like run over by a car and needs me. I'd be like, I'll call 911, but I gotta go. Like, I can't look at this."
Yeah.
So that was out the window, right? And then my mom's paying for school, which was so generous, but she was like, "Hey, you better figure out what you're going to do if you're not going to be a doctor." And I was like, "Yes, ma'am." So I'm sitting there. This is so unromantic. I made like a pro, con, good, bad, like what do I like, what don't I, what am I good at, what aren't I? And then I was like, "Lawyer." Why not? So I went to law school and I practiced for 3 years. I have, a few different bar admissions. But man, I just didn't love it. At the root of like all of this though is this desire to help people. And I
Yeah.
very naively thought that you can really help people as a lawyer. And, no, this is no shade to lawyers out there, but in my mind, if the conflict reaches the point of legal proceedings, like no, neither party's leaving happy, right? I don't care if
Yeah.
it's crim or civ or whatever. Like, if you get to the point of needing a lawyer, both people are going to be pissed off with the final result.
Yeah.
And what I love about my work right now, so, I've heard this podcast, I listened to it. She said, "Do you want to get certified to coach?" I said, "Yes." I found psychedelics for my own mental health, and then I started infusing them with my coaching practice. And that's really how we got here. But what I love about this work is, and maybe this is naive or simplified, but when people feel better within themselves, they're more likely to treat other people better.
Yep.
And I feel like I'm treating more of the root cause of the issues within humanity than like the law ever could.
That is such an evolved way of looking at it because you're right. Anytime you go into a litigious situation, no one's really going to be happy. There's not a, you're totally right. And what you're doing by making somebody happy is you're creating a generational sunrise because the kids are happy, the spouse is happy, the in-laws are happy, the grandparents, and then that radiates out. And what you're doing is you're creating a whole field of seeds that are going to grow into something.
I have this example that I think about all the time, because it was just so like stark to me. But this woman I was working with, I had met her in a different community, and she was interested in microdosing. And to me, she was like a mom of two kids. She was healthy and happy and fit, and she liked the microdosing so much that she wanted me to teach her to do what I did. And so she pursued facilitation, and she'd like come on one of my retreats. And so we worked together for a while, right? And at the end of all of my client like journeys, I always have a call with them, and I'm like, okay, I get out my little form. On a scale of 1 to 10, one being terrible and 10 being the best you've ever felt, how are you feeling on average before we started working together? And she goes, "Can I give you a 0?" And I was like, "You can." And then she goes on to tell me that she was actually thinking about ending her own life.
Oh,
And she did not want to be here anymore. Her dad had done the same. And so she knew the effects of what that would do, but she was like, "I was not happy as a mom. I wasn't happy as a person. I wasn't happy as a wife." And I was like, I almost didn't know what to say in that moment because it was like the Robin Williams thing, right? Where it's
mhm.
like, "No, Robin Williams is a comedian. He's
Yeah.
so happy." This woman presented so well. And she's like, "Well, now I'm a 7 or an 8. And like, I'm a way better mom. I'm like patient with my kids. I really love my life. I'm happier with my husband, all these things." And it's just like, first of all, you never know what's going on with someone.
Yep.
So be kind. You really never know.
Yep.
But second, it was like, this work works.
So, did you have a coach? Did you have somebody in your life that taught you, that showed you a way that allowed you to use that as a bedrock for what you're doing now?
It's so interesting how like I started to combine the two. I loved my coaching certification. It was amazing. It was also immersive, meaning I was receiving the tools that they were teaching. And so I was like, okay, I do feel a lot better, but I was still struggling with like almost that cough you can't kick of like,
Yeah.
why do I still have anxiety?
Yeah.
That this does not make sense. But at the same time, I was running a nonprofit in LA, and we were working with this Colombian counterpart. He was an expat from the United States. And so he came back, and we'd only been, talking on Zoom. It's like, let's go get dinner. And so he, during dinner, said, "I'm investing in this company. I want you to come check it out with me." And I'm very much like a yes girl. I'm like, "Yeah, why not?" I didn't
Yeah.
ask any follow-up questions. So we get there, and it's a mushroom company. And I
Wow.
was like, "What? What is this?" And he's like, "Well, here, these are microdosing capsules. Go take them. Let me know what you think." And I am not the girl who's like, someone finds a pill at the bottom of their purse and they're like, "Do you want that?" I'm like, "No,
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
I'm okay."
Uh-huh.
So, and at the time, no one was really talking about microdosing. Like, yeah, Paul Stamets is obsessed with mushrooms, but I really had to like piecemeal different trainings together, like from MAPS, the Multidisciplinary Association of Psychedelic Studies, and really Michael Pollan's book, How to Change Your Mind, is a great read for anyone who's even slightly interested.
Yeah.
And so I'm piecing all this together and I'm using it for myself to heal my anxiety. And I get to the end of like my 30 days or whatever, and I text him and I'm like, oh my God, like this is, yeah, invest. Like I feel so good. But because I'm a coach and I'm building an online business, I'm talking about it openly because that to me is just like a form of marketing. Like I don't gatekeep anything I do. I tell people about the weird, like little protection, like prayer I do in the morning and how I cold plunge and like all this stuff, right?
Yeah.
And people are like, "Oh, I want to microdose. Can you teach me?" And so it very much became something that like was my business, but that was not my intention at all.
Yeah. So let me ask you this, beyond a coach, who's been your hero? Who's been your inspirational force in your life to navigate to this point?
Honestly, my dad, and it's interesting because he died when I was so young, so he's almost this mythical feature or creature in my mind, like
Yeah.
because I remember my dad. My little brother doesn't. I remember my dad. But it's also this story he became a legend and a myth, right? Because I'm hearing all these stories and I'm sure like if he were still alive today, he would have the same amount of annoying features as my mom does to me.
Yeah.
But because he could just be the fun parent and then he died, he became really glorified. But my dad had a very tough life. Did not have a good upbringing. Was like, kicked out by his mom when he was young because the new boyfriend didn't like him and became a trucker and then bought his own trucking company and like really grew. He was the American dream. He
Yeah.
what came from nothing and he built himself up. And so when I think about like entrepreneurship was never on the table for me as a kid because even to my dad, like he thought education was a premium that he never got to experience. Like he didn't even graduate high school, right?
Yeah.
So it was always like, you go to school because I didn't go to school because I couldn't go to school. So, but that's it's a very different mindset, like
Yeah.
entrepreneurship from like, I'm going to work for someone else. But when it's tough and I'm in the muck and I'm like, this sucks, I think about my dad and I'm like, I can do it. Like, I have a
Absolutely.
way better starting point than he was.
Yeah.
And he's really like my North Star.
When I think about psychedelics and that being more of a prevalent way of people having breakthroughs and getting mental health that they need, it seems like something 10, 15 years ago, it was taboo. It was this Timothy Leary land. It was this realm,
Yeah.
that people would pick apart as being kind of that hippie revolution, but it's really becoming something that's medicinally accepted. Explain to me where we're at right now in 2026 with a more evolved mindset medically and just for mental health. Is it getting easier to win people over with this level of treatment?
Well, first of all, I love that you said Timothy Leary. I feel like
Yeah.
whenever I say that, people are like, who?
Yeah. Yeah.
So yay. So fun to have a conversation with people who know the players in the
Yeah.
history of this. And also thank you for asking the question because it is something I think about every day. Some days I think like, oh my gosh, people are so open-minded and like this is amazing. And some days I think, are we still having this conversation? Like, and it's tough too because for the longest time, the US public was getting fed a bunch of BS from the government and the propaganda was crazy when we look at experiments like MK Ultra, which led to like the criminalization of LSD and psilocybin, and we think about Dare and all the BS that was pumped to us from that program, and I'm like, I was a Dare kid, I signed my little pledge. So it's really hard to break disinformation when we've been fed it since a child.
Yeah.
Like people still are like, I'm worried it's gonna scramble my brains, and I just want to be like, what does that even mean?
Yeah.
Like, no, unless you put a little lobotomy stick up there and give it a swirl, like no one's scrambling anything.
Uh-huh.
So it is difficult. I think more and more, obviously, it's easier with the younger generations, especially because it's getting so picked up by like the longevity and the biohacking crowd, right? And so it's like a tool for wellness. It is a little bit harder with the older generations and like us being in the Midwest. I certainly combat more information misinformation here when I talk about it publicly, but I think so we're at an interesting point now, right? Where SSRIs have been around decades,
Yeah.
and there's more and more research coming out that hey, actually SSRIs do not have more effectiveness than a placebo. We don't know how serotonin works in the brain. Um, we're not really sure what like Prozac or anything is doing except for depleting your body's natural production of serotonin. So, okay. those pills aren't working. Therapy is one of those things people are like, I've been in therapy for 3 years. What do I have to show for it? Like, I just think we're getting to the point where people are exhausted by options that aren't working, that
Yeah.
more and more people are willing to try something new. And especially when they understand that microdosing is subperceptual, it's like you're not going to feel anything. You can go pick up your kids from soccer practice. You could operate heavy machinery. Like, you can do anything while microdosing. Then they start to think, like, okay, well, I'll at least give it a try. And
Right.
then they have great results and it's amazing.
Well, I think it's akin to like the legal world. Like there's this idea that if you get a really high-powered lawyer and pay a bunch of money, it doesn't matter what you did. It's all about the acumen of your lawyer that's going to get you out of it. It's the same thing with medicine. It's all about pandering to all of these companies and pharmaceuticals and places that have more money. Just even with the debate between alcohol and pot. Like alcohol is vastly more destructive to you than somebody that wants to take a gummy. And what's in THC, right?
A
Versus
plant.
what's in liquor.
Yeah.
So it's like the powers of capitalism ultimately erode the truth of what all of these things can do for people.
And I think like we see that more as we get older and we understand that more, right? Even now with the craze around like protein and stuff. Well, for so long, butter and bacon and all these things were demonized because big sugar was pumping in money so that sugar became the thing that we all
Huh?
went to. And I mean, I even look back at my grandma's like recipe book that I still have. Every recipe called for sugar. Why? Because big sugar was out there with the advertising money. Like, it's just wild to see, we get to be more critical thinkers of
Yeah.
like, why do they want me to do this?
Hmm.
What's in it for them? Like, who's paying for this study? Like, who's putting the big dollars there? And, I was talking to one of my business coaches. And he made an analogy about cannabis, right? And the journey that we've been on with cannabis and how cannabis, just like psilocybin, is in this J curve, right? And where cannabis has really taken off and we're in Kansas City, we're in Missouri, that's fine. Go to the
Yep.
dispensary, cross state line road though. And it's like, no, no, no,
That's
which is
right.
hilarious to me. But I think within 5 to 10 years, psilocybin is going to be the same thing where we're on the uptick of the J curve and people are going to be having more honest and real conversations about it.
So obviously, as you pointed out with the woman that wanted to not be alive anymore, when you're dealing with this in a coaching capacity with clients, you get into some dark, sketchy
Yeah.
things, right? How do
Yeah.
you protect yourself and allow yourself to do a good job and to take care of your soul? What is that every day when the alarm clock goes off that allows you to have this energy?
It's gonna be a kind of a woo thing. Do you want me to tell you the real answer?
Please do.
Okay. And I'm only gonna say this story for your listeners because they're like, well, I just also want to say I'm a very science-based person,
Yeah.
but I also know there are things that can be explained by science that really are energetic. When I was home with my mom during the pandemic, my mom is, post-menopausal. I did not have my cycle and I was not seeing anyone. And I was like, what is wrong with me? Like, I went to Walgreens about a pregnancy test. I wasn't pregnant. What was happening was I was really leaky in my energy and I was absorbing my mom's.
Uh-huh.
And so I stopped having a cycle. And I know that this is true because I have since gone back, like since I started doing this practice, when I helped my mom flip my grandparents' house and close their probate estate. And I was doing this practice, my cycle was fine. Okay,
Yeah.
so here's what I do. And I do this every single day. I did it this morning before we hopped on this call. I call on what I call my spirit team.
Yeah.
So whatever works for you, I think about that as God, like ancestors, like spirit guides, angels,
Sure.
animal protectors. And I'm like, okay, everyone, I almost imagine like I'm on the football stadium and they're in the crowd or like gather in the crowd.
Uh-huh.
And I'd call on Archangel Michael. I did grow up Catholic. I'm not currently a practicing Catholic, but I'll say, okay, so we think of Archangel Michael and he's like the protector, right? And he has a sword. I'm like, okay, cool. Use your sword, almost like Fruit Ninja, and cut any and all attachments that are not serving me or my highest good. And I'll even say, do it around my animals, do it around my loved ones, do it around anyone who's open to receiving this like protection, right? But you can't, when you do a cord cutting, you can't just like leave the little tendrils hanging. I go, okay, take those cords, bring them to the light so that they can be like alchemized into love,
Yeah.
where they were once attached to me and my animals and my loved ones, and everyone fill me with love in that light. And then I call back my power. I say I call back my power from the sources I knowingly gave away that were not for my highest good, the power that I allowed to slip away, and the power that people took from me. And then finally, I'll say, okay, and place me in a white light bubble of divine protection, keeping only me and my energy and energy for the highest good in, keeping everything else out. I ask that they do it around my animals, my loved ones, and anyone who's open to receiving it as well. And that's it. I do it every single day, and that's my like little shield that I put on
Yeah.
myself. And so people have told me about alcoholic parents, physically abusive parents, physically abusive partners, like terrible stuff that they have experienced. And I know that that is not mine, and I don't take it throughout my day.
Yeah, it's interesting how are you a fan of Stranger Things?
Okay, it's a little like I couldn't quite watch it because it made me feel a little bit too dark.
Right, right.
But I
There
watched the first season.
Okay, but it's interesting how we're starting to get to a point where our mass media, our movies, is about this mental thing, like what you're talking about. Like it used to be so empirical. I mean, I grew up in the '80s, and everything was like you had to see it. We're from Missouri; it's the show me state. Like there's all this stuff that's going on, but it's interesting how all of this like mental stuff is starting to happen now, where you really have people going inside the mind of an enemy and unlocking the darkness so that they can see. So, I mean, because everybody starts out as a kid. We have experiences and it can turn us down a good or bad path. But it's interesting how all like what you just said there, it's all this mental world, which totally makes sense to me. You are orchestrating something that no one will ever see. The only reason why we can even see it now is because you talked about it. But otherwise, you would just be in your head protecting yourself in a way that no one would know about. And I find that we're kind of mimicking that in our movies and our narratives more and more these days.
Yeah, I mean, definitely mentally. And I also think everything is energy. Literally,
Yeah.
everything's energy. Energy can neither be created nor destroyed, but it can change forms. And so when I think about doing that in the morning, I think that I am transmuting energy,
Yeah.
right? Because it can be positive, it can be negative. It's kind of like the same thing I was talking about. You can see a rose or a thorn, or you can just see one or the other. But there's something to be said about a good energetic practice. I really believe that too, because our mind, our reticular activating system, it's like we're going to find evidence for whatever we're focusing on, right? So
Yeah.
focus on the good.
So if you had a dream tonight and ran into that young version of you leaving Iowa to California and you had a book in your hands and it's your life so far and you handed it over and said, "This is what's happened so far." Would your young version of you believe it?
I think I think she would just be so confused that we stopped like working for someone else. Like at that point, well, I actually left from Illinois. I moved around a lot, but I was
Okay.
in Illinois at the time before I went to California. And I had never considered not working for someone. And
Uh-huh.
I think looking at it, kind of like what I said at the beginning when I was in that personal development program, I don't think she would have realized how scared she really was underneath the surface. It's kind of like she had a lot of what I had been doing in my life was posturing, right? Whether it had been through my profession or like the bags I would buy, or I had a really bitchy attitude. Like it was all posturing. I
Yeah.
was just trying to make someone think
Yeah.
that I was this person, but I wasn't really the person. And now I am the person, but I'm a lot nicer because I don't need a peacock anymore. So I
Yeah.
think it would have been really interruptive for her to realize that a lot of what she was doing was just peacocking.
So if you could walk into a room of all your clients, everyone that knew you in the law world, everyone that's known this posturing version of you, and you could walk into that room and tell them a fun story about your life. Maybe the first concert you went to, jumping out of an airplane, outrunning a bear, a fun story that would humanize you more to that group of people. What would be a great fun story you would tell that room?
Ooh. What would be a great fun story? Honestly, I think I would share one thing that I love so much about my time in San Diego was I did a lot of, I feel like, work around just being better friends with women. I was definitely one of those girls before. I was like, oh, I'm more of a guy's girl. Like, women are dramatic. I was like, yeah, you're dramatic, babe. Like, look in the mirror, right? But I would share stories about the things that I had done with those women, like joining, this yoga community and meeting all these women and helping my friend through her to really bad divorce and just like being a girl's girl and like
Yeah.
showing that, that's I think possible for people who feel like, oh no, I'm a guy's girl or have the story that all girls are mean. But then also, yeah, just showing that I had healed that part of myself as well. And that I hope that they would want to know me as
Yeah.
a girl's girl.
So of everything that you've done, everything you've accomplished and evolved to, what are you the proudest of?
That oh wow. I almost feel like I want to cry. But one time I was on a journey, and I love these facilitators I have in California. I really actually want to go back and sit with them again because just like I am a big fan of being facilitated for, and I'm talking about a larger journey, not like microdosing.
Yeah.
But it was a journey, and I didn't think anything was going to happen because it was like an hour in, and nothing was like kicking in for me. And I was like, you know what? This is probably just a good night to sit and meditate. Like, how often do I really give myself this much space to just be with my feelings or whatever, right? And then boom, like once I had accepted like maybe nothing's happening, I was in it and I had this extreme experience of like loving myself. Not like the president loves himself.
Right.
Like I really like who I am. Like I feel like I know that I'm a good person. I'm not a perfect person, but I do my best. I take accountability for when I fall short of how I would like to show up. I'm genuine, I'm honest, I'm loving. And for a long time, I did not like myself, like that's why I was bitchy. It's because I didn't really like myself. So to sit there in that experience and feel how much I love myself, yeah, that's what I'm most proud of. Is that like I am in a place where I genuinely like who I am.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people don't, and that's why they treat others poorly.
Yep.
But I like you can't put a price on loving yourself, not from an
Absolutely.
egotistical place, just
Sure.
from like a really pure place.
No, I love that answer. So let me ask you this. You've been around the country, you've been to many places, you're back in Kansas City. What's the greatest thing about living in Kansas City?
The seasons.
Yeah.
I love it. I love, oh my gosh, when it was fall, I was outside every day with my dog. We were running through the leaves. And even now that it's cold, like, I love the seasons. To me, it's a reminder that nature is cyclical, life is cyclical. Like, not everything is the high highs or the low lows. There is no rebirth without death. Like, the leaves have to fall off to bloom again in the spring. And I think, like, that was something I really missed in San Diego, where it's beautiful, but it's Groundhog Day, and you kind of never feel like you're moving
Yeah.
because it is so the same. And I really appreciate that. And, people in the Midwest want to help you. Like if you
Yeah.
need to move a couch, someone's going to come help you
Uh-huh.
move a couch. And that's very underrated.
Absolutely. So let me ask you this. Who would be who would be an ideal crowd that should be reaching out to you right now? If they have any questions, they're on the edge, they've watched this, they're curious about what we're talking about with coaching and psychedelics, who should talk to you? Who should hire you?
I love to work with women. I primarily work with women, although sometimes I do work with a really cool dude. 30 to 50 have definitely they've done the things, right? Like they could probably actually tell me what their therapist is going to say. They're like, yeah, this is great, but maybe they can't stop going back to the ex they know isn't good for them, or they've been saying they want to, write that book for forever and it never happens. They're feeling a little stuck and they know they want more. They know there's more of life to be enjoyed.
Yeah.
Um, and they're ready to see what else is out there for them. I always like to say, like, the question that you really should be asking yourself is how good can it get? Because it
Yeah.
can get really freaking good. Yeah, so not necessarily a business owner, although I do work with a lot of business owners. I also work with C-suite women. I work with a cool structural engineer in an engineering firm. So having your own business is not a requirement, but being someone who's open to doing this work and
Yeah.
who's ready to take some radical responsibility over their life definitely are prerequisites.
So where do they go? How do they do it? How do they reach out? How do they hire you? What's the good business?
Well, come find me. I'm at my website, Julie Cyvonne, JuliECyvonne.com. You can find me on Instagram at that same place, at Julie Cyvonne, no periods, no spaces or whatever. If you're interested in learning more about psychedelics, you can definitely check out my podcast, The Inner Trip, 365 Days of Plant Medicine. But if you have any questions, like there's a question form on my website, submit it, I answer them all. Or you can just DM me, like I'm very friendly and I respond to all my DMs.
Okay.
But yeah, you can learn more there.
Excellent. I will put all these links in the show notes. Julie, what a joy. Thank you so much. It's been
Thank you so much for having me.
not only has it been wonderful, I always love having that local Kansas City flavor. It's so rare and I love it. So we're in the 816. It's so good to catch up. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.